So let's make a bit larger demo, demonstrate what can we do with JavaScript and HTML. The outcome will be of course a bit rude because we don't know yet the CSS, but let's make a basic application that we can then redesign later on. So I have a new folder, music maker, and two files, index.html and musicmaker.js, and besides that I have some audio files here. They are just plain MP3 files. Okay, the HTML part once again will be quite short. We are making music maker, and what we want to have this script source js/musicmaker.js defer, and that's all we need there. Then few elements here. First of all, we have a name for this application. We are building music maker, and we need few files, of course. Not files, but buttons, etc. So let's see that this is working. Yeah, we got text there. First of all, we need to have some buttons, yes, so let's build them. Button 1 is going to be play button, so we can play some music. Let's have the ID called play. Then we would like to get that's one button. Then we need our music maker needs different tracks for different audio files. So let's add them. So yeah, okay. Input type, not button but radio. So you can select one of these tracks, and then there is ID called track 1. Its name equals track, so this is track, and value equals 0. This is, in a sense, this is now important that you have these name and value pairs. So this is track 1, but actually it's track 0 in the array that we will have in the JavaScript part. And let's put that so that this is checked. So this is already selected. So let's see. Now we have a play button here, nothing happens, and we have one radio button. So we would definitely like to have a label for this track 1. It's called track 1 label, and let's have a VR there. Let's see. Now we have a track 1, and let's just copy paste these. Let's have a, let's say 4 tracks. So track 2, track 3, and track 4. And this is now track 4, track 4, not track 4, track 3, and track 2. Yeah, and then this is track 1. No, yeah, it's track 1. I'm trying to get this one, track 2, and then track 3 and track 4, and these values will be 4, 2, 1, and 0 is already there. Now we have 4 tracks, and then we would like to have some kind of buttons that we are installing different instruments there, and then the visualization of these selected tracks. So let's build the places for those. We can use just a div here, and it has an ID called add buttons. So here we will have the instruments, and then we have another div called tracks, yeah, like that. This will visualize us the tracks. So these are just divs, we don't see them here. And yeah, now we have the checked value in every track, so of course it can be only on one track, which is the first here. Now it works. This is pretty much the HTML we have. Then let's build the JS. First of all, we are going to use these audio samples. Let's build an array for them. So samples equals array. And then we are just pushing those samples there. We will use objects here, so we are defining that the source for this file is in the audio/base.mp3, and then we are also defining that name is base. This we will have several samples. Drum. We are not taking the guitar right now, we are just messing it with later. So piano, silence, strange beat, and violin. Yeah. Drum, piano, silence, strange beat, and violin. Like that. Now we have our samples in an array, and next we will have those tracks. So we have to we designed that we have 4 tracks here. So let's have an array also for them. Tracks equals array, but these samples, they are constant. We are not doing anything to them, but these tracks, they we are working with, so they cannot be constant, so they are just variables. And every track, yeah, so tracks is the array, but there will be 4 tracks, so we need to push 4 arrays to this. And this tracks array, so this is a 2-dimensional array. Now we have the 4 tracks there. Then we will need some things like we have this ID called add buttons. So we want to get these new samples to that div. So let's first get that element equals document get element by ID, and it was add buttons. Now we have the add button element, then we need some kind of a ID here equals 0 in the beginning, and then we are looping through those samples with for each, and we are working with 1 sample at a time. We are using anonymous array function here, and now we can just log that we are taking a sample at a time. So sample name would be enough. So we are logging that we are getting a sample, each sample. Let's see. Yes, we are going through this array and taking 1 sample at a time. And then we are building new button to our application. So let's have a helper variable new button. It equals document create an element, and we are creating a button. Now this new button, let's set an attribute. We are adding a new attribute called data ID. So we can give a special ID for any element, any HTML element. It has to be started with data keyword, and after that there is a dash, and then there is the name of the attribute, and this time we are using ID. And this we have already here the ID we are using, so let's have that and add it in each time on the loop. Then we are going to need event listener. And once again, this will be a click. So when the button is clicked, we are doing something. Let's see what we are going to do. We are calling a new function called add sample, and we are giving this button to that sample, that method. We still don't have it, but we are going to have it soonish. And then the new button inner text equals sample name. And now we can add this new button to this add new buttons, append child, new button. This is good. Let's see, it might even work. Yeah, now we have buttons here. We can add bass, drum, piano, silence, strange beat, or violin in our music generator. But of course, this won't work because this add sample method is not yet created or function. So let's create this add sample. Function add sample, and it is getting this add button as a parameter. So the next thing is that we need to push the sample to correct track and then also visualize it here. So actually we are not yet visualizing these tracks in anyhow here. Let's go first visualize these tracks. So let's just build a loop, for loop. We have a variable. Let's go until this tracks length, and this is just a simple for loop, very basic. And let's build a few elements here. So track div equals document create element div, and this track div we are setting an attribute id, and yeah, we are setting an id for this track div, and the id will be track div plus this I. So we are putting a number there. We are also going to need another element called track div header. This is going to be h2, and then this header will have a inner text visualized something. So it's called track plus this I. And now we can just add this. So this track div append child track div header, and then this tracks div append child track div. Now let's see, we should have this tracks div. Okay, and we don't have this tracks div, so we would like to get it, and it was this our id tracks. Let's see, cannot access id. There is an id, it should be just I. Yeah, now we have track 0 to 4 or 3, and let's have here it's 1 to 4, so we are probably going to like to have here something like this. Now it's visualized similarly. So now next thing is that we would like to have this bash or anything else going to down, so this add sample should do the trick. First let's log that we are doing something. So adding what we are adding, add button ID, for example. Let's see. Now we are adding base. It's adding, but there is no ID. No, there is no ID, but data set.id. Yeah, now we are adding 1 or 5. So we decided that we have this attribute in the button. We are taking the ID there, and now it's available through this dataset member variable. And these IDs are just these track IDs that are from here. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And next we are going to need some kind of a sample number and also track number. So let's get these. So the first one is this add button dataset ID. This is the sample number, and the track number is document. Now we are using this query selector. This is like a bit like CSS we are using now, but let's see what we will get. So we are getting trying to get an input. This is an input field. So input, its name has to be track, and like this, of course. Yeah. So these input elements. They have the name track, and then we need to get the value of that track that is selected. So that one we can get by writing here that it needs to be checked with colon, and that value is available here in the value variable. And we could also now log these things, so to be sure that we are getting the right value, sample number, and let's add b here. Like this, and then we are also putting the track number like this. Let's see. Let's add strange beat. Adding 4, sample number 4, track number 0. Track is 0, and now track number is 3. We are getting absolutely correct values. So the next thing is that we push this new sample to this tracks array. We have tracks. Now we are actually having the tracks is a 2D array, 2-dimensional array, so we need to have the track number here, and to that track we are pushing the sample, and now we are using the sample number. Now we are pushing something from here to the array of this ID. Yeah, so it is working, hopefully, but this does not visualize anything, so let's add it also here as a div. So let's get the track div, and it equals a document by ID, and the ID was defined here, track div and number, so we can get that kind of a track div plus track number. So that's the track div, and then we are creating a new item. Create element, we are creating a div, and then we are just telling that this new item inner text equals samples sample number name. Then we can just add to this track div, new item. And let's see. Track 2 strange beat, it did work. Track 4 violin. Yeah, this is working. So now we would like to have some kind of a play here. So let's go with the play button. So first we need to get that play button. And it equals, of course, once again, get element by ID. And its ID was play. And let's add a event listener there. When you are clicking it, we are calling a method called play song, like that. And now we need that method, play song function. So we have 4 tracks, and when we are playing the song, we need to play all those tracks simultaneously. So we are just building a loop there, and we are going through of those tracks. So tracks for each, we are getting a track, and we are just playing it. And if first check if the track length is more than 0, so then there is an instrument. If there is no instrument, we are not going to play anything. And if there are instruments, 1 or more, then we can play the track. And we are giving a parameter as a track, 1 track, which is getting out of this tracks array, and this tracks array was this 2-dimensional array, and then we are giving it this ID there. And this is probably not right. It should not be increased here, because if there is no track, then it's not increased. So let's increase it here. And now we are missing a method called play track. So this is playing just one track, and we are getting this track number just because we want to do some visualization. Track number. First, let's create a new audio, like this. And okay, there is a typo. Let's create a new audio, and then let's have I0 here, and we are using this audio object to play everything here. So audio. So we want to loop this thing. So that's why we are first we are adding a event listener, but we are not listening any play event, but we are listening to ended. So when the track ends, then we are starting it again. And here we will have a function where we are starting it again. So I equals I plus plus less than track length I, otherwise 0. And audio source equals this track I. So one track can have several samples, and we are going these samples through. So this source, and then we can just play it. And let's put here that we are starting track, and now we have the track number here, track number, instrument, and this instrument we can get track I name, and this is going to be true. Now the third parameter is true here, and we can set audio volume equals 1.0, so it's since it's maximized. We do not want to loop. We are looping here manually because we want to change the track, the sample in a track to next one. So we are not looping. We are looping the tracks, but that we are doing here manually. We are starting it again when it's ending. So then we will need to start it here in the manually at the first time. So audio source equals track 0 source, and here we can also have the same. And let's first start the audio here like this. Now I am not quite sure that this will work, but we will soon see, and actually we will hear it. Let's put a piano there. Yeah. So there is a piano now playing. And it's actually this piano sample is quite long, so and now we don't have any way to stop the music, we just reload the page. Let's put the piano on the first track, then on the second track we are going to need a bass loop. In a third track we are going to use drum, silence, drum, silence, and in the fourth track let's put violin there, maybe some strange beat, violin, silence. Okay, now we are having music and we have added several tracks there. Let's play. And it's saying here that it's starting new instruments here and there. Yep. So yeah, let's just piano and violin there, and then on the third drum, silence, drum, silence, drum, silence. Let's play. Yeah. There are two things I'm not good at. One is doing music or singing, and the second thing is drawing fancy pictures. I cannot. They are not my skills, and now you have seeing me doing music. Now we have let's say we have 6 tracks here. No, 6 samples and 4 tracks, but what if we wanted to add our own sample? So let's modify this so that we can upload our own sample. Let's add a button here. No button, but input field. Type equals file, and its ID is input sample. So we have a way to input some kind of sample. Name equals the same, input sample, and we are accepting only audio here, so we are not accepting images or anything like that. And then let's have a button that will do this uploading. So its ID equals upload. Yeah. And here text add new sample. Let's see. Yeah. If we can get this, can we get it? So we can select a file. Here we have a guitar. Let's add it there manually soon, but now we have nothing, no function there, so we need to build the functionality. So first let's take the button, upload button equals document get element by ID, and this ID was upload. and at event listener, click. When the button is clicked, we are doing something. Let's add the code directly here. It's not that long. So first of all, there was this input sample field. We need that. File equals get element by ID input sample. And this, okay, here is something strange. Input sample, we are not needing the whole element, but only the files it provides us, and actually only the first file that it's providing us. And then we need to have a new audio source. First it is empty, we don't know it yet. And if this file exists, so if we are providing an empty file or something else, then we do not have file. But if we have it, actually we can do it like if this file does not exist, then just return, so we don't need anything else. Now we can continue. We have the file, we don't need to indent the lines. And now we can have this audio source. It is URL, create object URL, and we have this file which is, we are providing the URL to that file, and this source is then there. And now we are then creating a new sample equals this source. So as in the beginning of the file we have these samples, now we are creating a new one. So in that we need this source is this audio source, and then we need to give it some kind of a name. New sample is enough. And then in this samples array we just push this new sample there. So now it's in the array, but it's not enough. We need to have a position for that as a button there too. First we need some kind of ID for it. So it's this samples length -1 is the newest sample we are pushing to that samples array. And then we are creating a new button. And to this new button, we are setting attribute data ID and giving this ID to that data ID attribute. And we are adding event listener. When this button is clicked, then of course this new sample is added, and it took this new button as a parameter. And new button inner text could be this sample name, which was just new sample. And to this add buttons we just append child, this new button. This might work. Let's see. Okay, so let's choose a file. I have here the guitar mp3. Let's open it and add new sample. We got new sample, we got no errors. So on track 1 we are adding this guitar, and then we need to add a lot of silence. This silence is actually 2 seconds of silence. Let's put there a lot of silence, so there is only intro guitar. And then in the track 2 we have a little bit silence, and then we have a piano background, and track 3 we might have this bass, and on track 4 drum silence, violin, drum, silence, and let's play it. Yep, it's working. Yeah, by the way, as some buttons did generate this fav icon error, so I don't have any fav icon here, but it's just an image, basically PNG image that we can have here. It's the one the browser is showing in here in the tab image icon. It's the fav icon, but you can add it if you want. But here, now we created a music maker, which includes several new things. So we have used arrow functions, we have used file adding, uploading image, how we can do that, create a object from file. So now user has way to upload a file, but it's not saved to any server. We are not doing any backend programming here. It just lives here in the browser until the page is refreshed. So we are only working on a browser memory in this course. But this was this kind of a demonstration.